So, want to welcome everybody to Bobby and Brian on Real Estate. This is episode 2. Woohoo! We're now officially in process. My name is Brian Pate, the lovely and talented Bobby Carroll here with me. And we've got a special guest this week. Uh, he's the only bad thing about this guy is he's a University of Florida graduate. The second worst thing about him is he lives near Ohio State University, but we forgive him for that one. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sean Carpenter is here. Sean's with Coldwell Banker up in Ohio. Sean, you want to give us a little background on yourself before we get started here?
Yeah, good afternoon, Bobby and Brian and everybody. I'm 27 years in the real estate business, Brian. I started as an individual agent, did that for 4.5 years, then became an assistant manager with one of our branch offices, which meant I still got to sell. I just kind of helped with recruiting and some training opportunities. And then that manager that I worked underneath left the business and I took over that office. So I managed for 2 years. In those 2 years, I realized I loved the coaching and training part of the job. I hated the managing part of the job. So I became the director of education for the company, Coldwell Banker companies in Columbus and Cincinnati. So I was quickly in charge of agent development for about 1,400 agents at the time. And I was in charge of all the new agent training and the top agent coaching and the events and things like that. Did that for about 12 years, Brian, and I started speaking around the country. And I decided in 2016 to retire from the director of training role, go back to being an active agent. So I left the paycheck, left the benefits, went back to being an independent agent like people jumping on this call, and opened up my own company called Sean Speaks. And now I actively sell here in Central Ohio. I coach about 85 of our top agents and teams in Columbus, Cincinnati, and I speak about 50 times a year at different events around the country. So that's where I've met you and Bobby, obviously out at events. And so I'm kind of a three-legged stool as far as touching different aspects of the business.
Absolutely. Very good. And folks, for those of you that don't know, Bobby Carroll was licensed when he was 8 years old back in the early 1900s, and has probably one of the better minds in terms of marketing. If you're familiar with Dacno Marketing that does websites here in the Johnston County area, they've been doing my website now for almost 10 years at this point. But Bobby worked with them for a while. His son Brad is a principal in that, and they do a great job. So if you ever need a website, that is my plug for you. Shameless plug. Maybe we can get Bobby and Brian on Real Estate sponsored by Dacno Media. We'll talk Brad into that. Maybe he'll give us 50 cents a piece for that sponsorship. We'll see. So
I don't know about that.
So let's talk a little bit about what's going on. I'm going to start locally here. Bobby, I know you're going to hit Johnston County, so I'm going to talk about the greater Triangle area, and then we're going to get into some lead generation stuff and some ideas for you. We're going to have Sean talk about his 4-H program. That's one of my favorites, that I like it so much. Not only do I use it myself, but I teach it to the coaching clients that I work with. But so what we're seeing in the Triangle market, October is the first month this year where in the 16 county base area, we sold more houses in 2024 October than we did in October of 2023. The numbers have been down for the rest of the year so far, so we're excited to see that. Median sale price year over year is up by $7,000 to $415,000. That's an increase of right at 8,000, so a little bit over 2% there. And then month over month, it went from 405K to 410K, so a $5,000 increase there in median home price. It's tough to do the end of the year because of the seasonality that exists, but it's important to see. We are still, as far as inventory has more than doubled in the last 7 months here in the Triangle market. We've been over 8,000 active listings for the last 6 or 7 weeks at this point. So we're still seeing increases in that, and we dropped below 8,000 pending homes in that 16 county base area. We dropped below that 8,000 number over the weekend with all of the closings for the month of October that checked in. So right at 2,880 homes sold last month in the Triangle area. For those of you that don't know and don't follow the statistical data, we track the 16 county base area, which includes Wake, Durham, Orange, Franklin, Johnston, Lee, Vance, Nash, and a couple of others. So you can check that out if you want to hit the Facebook page, Brian Pate Seminars on Facebook, and be able to see what we're posting there. So, Bobby, talk a little bit about Johnston County. What are you guys seeing down there? Because you still got a lot of activity there, especially with new construction.
Yeah, and thanks, Brian. Appreciate being on the call today, and it's always terrific to hang out with my guy Sean from Ohio. Listen, it was crazy. Inventory was piling up down here up until the last 2 weeks, and all of a sudden we've seen things start to trend south, and that's expected seasonality wise because you would think that as we get deeper into the fall and winter months that people are not apt to put their home on the market. They're kind of, waiting around for the elections to get behind us and waiting for the new year to get behind us, and attack that spring market. So we've seen about 1,050 homes on the market, and we're talking about homes and condos that I track. So that has started to slow down a bit. And here in our market here, 60%, over 60% of our market is new construction. Christine Petty's on the call, and she's a new construction expert. So I know she keeps an eye on inventory, probably just as much in Johnston and Wake County. But yeah, so if it wasn't for new construction in our county, we would be in for a world of hurt for inventory.
Got it. And it's similar up here in Wake Forest. We got about 48% new construction in Wake Forest. Get up into Franklin County and it's up like you guys. It's up in the 56, 57% range. And of course, the big challenge in Franklin County is just being able to get that water allocation because they're only allowing so many per year to be adding on to that. Sean, talk to us a little bit about the Ohio market. What's going on up in your area? Because it's not often that we get to hear perspectives from other parts of the country.
Yeah, Columbus is a vibrant market. I think we move between like the 16th and the 18th largest city in the country, which a lot of people don't realize how big Columbus is. I think we're 16th as of last count, could be 15th, right. But our market's vibrant. We're the capital of Ohio. We have the Ohio State University, obviously, as one of our main employers. A lot of insurance companies, Nationwide Insurance, based here in Columbus, banks. And a ton of hospitals and quite a few universities. I was just looking at the report that one of our agents sends out, kind of comparing year over year and kind of just some numbers that you put your left brain hat on, Brian, and look at some of the nerdy numbers. I was just interesting looking at the inventory. Inventory is down as far as number of homes sold year to date. It's actually above where it was last year because the numbers I'm looking at are through December 31st, but interesting to note, guys, there's been 21,472 sales in the Columbus MLS, which is Central Ohio and about 5 counties around that. So the greater Central Ohio area, which is a little more than 2 million people. Probably, I'm not sure what the Raleigh-Durham marketplace is, but when you look at those numbers, 21,472 closings, I quickly double that and say 42,944 sides, right? Because there has to be a buyer for every seller. And so, I just look at that number as a positive, guys, because 42,944 sides meant there was 42,944 commission checks earned by somebody, right? Or at least the opportunity for that. And so business is certainly out there. Now we all know, and we'll talk, on the session today, there are agents out there that are having great years. I just got done coaching some agents who, she's up in units or up in volume, but down in units. And I always say, if you're going to pick one, would you rather be up in units and down in volume or up in volume and down in units? I mean, you're making more money and selling less houses. And that's kind of the part and parcel with the market we're in right now. But overall, days on the market staying pretty strong here, guys. 25 days on the market is the average days on the market. So while it's not 25 minutes like it used to be in the last couple of years, 25 days is still, as we know, Bobby and Brian, a pretty quick moving market. But we do need to start having some conversations with sellers right now to set expectations that they probably shouldn't, we'd love to get multiple offers, but that's going to be a big piece into what they decide to list it at and the condition it's going to be in and those types of things. And so sometimes people still want to reach for the stars and not be realistic about what the buyers are looking at. But overall, the market, I would say, is healthy. We got a ton of people just like you guys probably. Tomorrow is a big day because it's going to be, number one, no more political ads on our TVs after tomorrow. But the buyers that use, I'm going to wait till after the election as their excuse or their stall tactic, that's off the table as of Wednesday.
Absolutely.
Hey,
Yeah.
I got a
So
question for you,
So
real quick.
hold on 2 seconds, Bobby. So just for
Yeah,
comparison purposes, I'm here live on Dorify on here, and I want to capture this. We've sold
yeah.
in the Raleigh-Durham area, we've sold 29,410 homes this year, compared to what Sean talked about. So that's almost 60,000 sides. That's 59,000 sides. So that's a good number to look at. That's a great perspective to have. That to say that there's not any business and that business stinks right now, that's just completely false. It's just are the right people finding your listing, and if they're not, it's probably price. And if it's not showing, it's probably price. And if it's shown 30 times and nobody is making offers, it's probably price. So, I think that that's probably the bigger conversation. And there's a lot of people that haven't had to have that conversation in a while. So I think that's something new. So, Bobby, I apologize for cutting you off. Go ahead, bud.
No, I'm glad you chimed in. I did have a question for Sean. I'm assuming that New Albany is included in the numbers you just gave us.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you're really familiar with our market, and just kind of bring everybody up to speed with Sean's market. I would equate, and I'm going to ask this, Sean. I would equate New Albany to be sort of like a Cary, North Carolina. So a higher price point, higher end, a very, very desirable place to live. It's right there by Cardinal Health. It's got, some really high paying jobs. So would you say that that's a pretty good analogy there, Sean?
Yeah, I would, and I'd probably look at like a Chapel Hill, like Upper Arlington, right, kind of where a lot of
Okay.
the faculty and the staff would live. Durham, similar. I mean, Durham's got little pockets. I know just from being down there, you got some big expansive properties, and you got some smaller city properties. And once again, you go into Raleigh by NC State. When we were at bar camp last year, I really enjoyed that neighborhood that that area was in. But we have our suburbs. Columbus is like a clock. If you've never been here, it's like a clock, right? Downtown Columbus is the center. Our outer belt goes around. And so I always talk to people: do you live inside the outer belt or outside the outer belt? And are you at 8 o'clock? Are you at 2 o'clock? And the northern suburbs are probably a little more affluent, popular, higher price points, and better schools than some of the inside the outer belt cities.
So interestingly enough, NAR has just released the results of their 2023-2024 home buyers and sellers survey. And interestingly enough, even after the NAR settlement and all the craziness from it, FSBOs have dropped to their lowest point for an all-time low, according to NAR. So less than 4% of people are using for sale by owner, the for sale by owner route. So if you're marketing to for sale by owners, that's a great opportunity to get business. They're just
And Brian, let me interrupt you for a second, because I
out
haven't
there.
seen the report yet, but that's one of my favorite reports every year. Are you looking at it right now?
Yeah, it's here.
Can you go down like in that question about FSBOs? There's a question that says, "Did you know the buyer?" Right? And usually it's more than 50% of the people knew the buyer, which means it wasn't an arm's length transaction. It
Correct.
was a nephew, it was an uncle, it was a fellow investor. And so that's even more ammunition for a realtor to use against someone going FSBO, is that if you don't already know the buyer, the chance of you finding one is not as strong as you'd think.
Exactly. So I've put the link up to this. This is from nar.realtor, Realtor Magazine. So if you haven't read this, this is a place where you can get folks, this is how you figure out your marketing plan for the next 12 months. And of course, it's November 4th. And what you do today manifests itself in 90 to 120 days. So it's time to start working on your pipeline for next year. So what do you do for marketing? This is telling you what's going on. You're seeing an increase in multi-generational. You're seeing an increase in the number of cash transactions. Cash transactions up to 26%, which is the highest it's been since at least 2003. So, the buyers are out there. You just got to do some work to find them. While we're talking about that, I want to talk about a subject that's going to frustrate some of you, and I'm going to go ahead and apologize in advance that we talk about this, because I know you're tired of hearing about it. But I want to show you a copy of a text that an agent sent to me that they had received as the listing agent. And I want to remind you, here in North Carolina, it is absolutely illegal to hold up the negotiation of an offer and make your offer contingent upon a certain level of buyer's agency compensation. And you can see in this when it says the 2T OTP is attached, all seller signed disclosures, a 220 comp form, and a DDRA as mentioned above, an additional provisions document was along with pre-qualification. Our only contingency, the offer to purchase and contract, is expressly contingent upon execution and return of the cooperating compensation agreement simultaneously. If the offer to purchase and contract is executed by your seller and returned without a signed cooperative compensation agreement, it is not effective since it did not comply with the contingency and will be deemed a counteroffer. Folks, number one, that's practicing law, because you're taking away what the signatures of the offer to purchase would be in North Carolina. So, Sean, I don't know how your system works up there, but in North Carolina Real Estate Commission Rule 58A 112B says that we cannot put compensation for agents into the standard offer to purchase and contract form or any form that's pre-printed like that. This type of activity, folks, is illegal. This agent has been reported to the Real Estate Commission by the listing agent. And the buyer's agent is especially angry because it was a multiple offer scenario. And not only did they lose the multiple offer scenario, but she also got reported to the Real Estate Commission for doing something wrong. Bottom line is you discuss your compensation before you write the offer. And in the best case scenario, you should discuss the compensation with the listing agent before you even show the property. And I realize that some companies are not disclosing what they're paying. If they do that, you need to have a conversation with the buyer and let them know that it's possible that they may have to pay it on their own, or that they could include it in the closing costs or concessions that are allowed under paragraph 15, which is the buyer expenses to be paid by the seller. So just please keep that in mind. North Carolina is one of only 3 states in the country that doesn't allow you to include compensation in the actual offer to purchase and contract. And the reason is because the Bar Association in the state of North Carolina says that because we're not a party to the contract, it's between the buyer and the seller, therefore our compensation should not be discussed. Now, if you have an attorney write up your own agreement, and you write up your own entire contract and you don't use Form 2T, you can discuss it all day long. But in a pre-printed form, you're not allowed to do that. So with it being this week is the 1-year anniversary of the Seitzer Burnett trial, when the NAR was found guilty of conspiracy to raise prices and a collusion to keep commissions at a certain level. So that's why we're discussing this. It was just 1 year ago that all of this craziness started. So for those of you that have any questions on that, we'll certainly be taking those here in a bit. Before we can get our, so Diane says, not on the form, but can't we have a sentence in email written by an attorney? No, the Real Estate Commission said that is not okay. NC Realtors sent out an announcement that would be a way to do it, and they quickly retracted that statement because the Real Estate Commission said no mention of compensation can be tied to the offer to purchase period. So that's where it's a very important piece to remember in all of this. Before we get to our to question and answer period, I want Sean to talk a little bit about lead generation for us. One of my favorite things that what really got my attention was Sean when we first met at a rebar camp. By the way, if you've never been to a rebar camp, I always suggest attending those. They're great. And Sean's going to start communicating with me and Bobby better so that we know when they're happening all over the country, so that the Three Stooges can meet up wherever we're going to the rebar camp. But the rebar camp is where I first saw Sean present his 4-H lead generation plan. And Sean, if you'll take a couple of minutes here and walk us through that, I would love to hear that, please.
Yeah, happy to share it because it's one of my favorite things to talk about. And I'm just shocked at how many agents love the idea, but don't actually put it into use. And it's because it takes some time and it takes some commitment. But, when I left the director of training role, Brian and Bobby, back on August 1st, 2016 was my last day as an employee, my last day with paychecks and benefits. And on August 2nd of 2016 is when I went back to being an independent contractor. And so I knew I needed to get back in the field and start growing my business just like a new agent would, just like all of us are tasked to do every day. And so I needed a system that I could follow that would be something that could be repeatable and something that I know would put seeds in the ground. And so I use the metaphor of a farmer, because the cool thing about real estate, guys, is we all know is it's different every day, right? But the bad thing is it's different every day. And so if you don't have any type of system to put seeds in the ground each day, you're not going to get a crop down the road. And this is the perfect time of year to start thinking about this, because we're trying to build the seeds we put in the ground these next few weeks is more than likely going to turn into business in Q1 or Q2 of 2025. And so my 4-H club is very simple, you guys. It's something I try to do each day before anything else happens, before appointments, before showings, before dial for dollars or anything like that. My 4-H club is very simple. The first H is I do 5 handwritten notes each day. Handwritten notes. I do 5 handwritten notes. Now, most of you guys know that when you check your mailbox today, if there's 6 things in there and one of them is a handwritten note, you're going to open the handwritten note first. In fact, right now, you're going to get so many political banners and pieces of paper in the mail. You're going to throw those out right away, and the handwritten note's going to really stand out. In most cases, Brian and Bobby, people are going to read that handwritten note not just one time; they'll read it a second time. They'll leave it on the counter for their spouse or partner to read, or they have a special junk drawer or basket where they keep their handwritten notes. So I do 5 handwritten notes each day. We can come back to that in just a bit. The second H is I do my hot sheet. The hot sheet in the MLS. Right? You guys might call it something different there in your region, but the hot sheet is the newest things that have hit the market. Right? It's the coming soons. It's the in contracts. It's the new listings. It's the price changes. It's the sales. It's the pendings. It's the expireds, and sometimes the cancels. I look through that twice. I look through the first time as a realtor for my specific town. Once again, I wouldn't do all of Raleigh-Durham. I would do Cary or Apex or Holly Springs, not Wake Forest. I would do my specific area, and I look through it just to get my head with what's new in the market. And then I look through it a second time, guys, to see, do I know anybody that lives within a couple blocks of that property? Now, down there, Brian, where you live, you have a lot of kind of communities that have a name and maybe a main entrance. And so maybe you say to yourself, do I know anyone that lives in Quaker Forest, or do I know anyone that lives in, Chapel Hill Farms, or whatever it might be? And if I do, I'm going to call them, email them, or text them just a simple message that says, hey, Brian, just want to let you know there's a new listing in your neighborhood. Hope you and the wife are well. Let's grab a beer soon. Or, hey, Bobby, that property I told you about last week went into contract. Not sure what it sold for, but I'll keep my eye on it. P.S. Hope to see you at the tailgate this weekend. I'm not trying to sell the property. I'm just trying to make sure that Bobby and Brian know that when they think about real estate in their neighborhood, they should think about me. The third H is happy birthdays. I jump onto Facebook and I see who's having a birthday. Facebook will tell you, top right corner, who's having a birthday. And I then go there and I leave them a message on Facebook, or, as Bobby and Brian know, if they're close friends of mine, they're going to get a video text message. A video text message on their phone directly to them. Now, if they're close friends of mine, I probably have their phone number in my phone. So they're going to get a video text message where I'm going to wish them happy birthday. And then the fourth H is what I call my high fives. High fives. If you're taking notes, just put 5 bullet points underneath the high fives, because there's 5 things. We'll do it. Diane, I'll recap them in just a second. But the high fives, because I'm already on Facebook, I'm going to then scroll over to my news feed, and I'm going to do 5 likes on Facebook. All right, so 5 likes. I'm going to do 5 comments on Facebook, just simply commenting on 5 people's posts. I'll jump over to Twitter, my favorite channel. I know Brian's too. And I'll do 5 comments or retweets on Twitter. I'll do 5 comments or on Instagram. That could be on the stories or on the feed. And I'll send 5 random text messages to 5 people in my phone. That could be a have a nice day. It could be a funny GIF, a funny meme. It could be congrats on the Hurricanes win last night. Congrats on the Wolfpack's big win last night. Could be anything, right? Just 5 random text messages. And once I've done that, I go get my morning coffee. I go get my morning coffee at Starbucks or Dunkin' as my reward for putting seeds in the ground. Now, let me think about this for a second, everybody. If I send 5 handwritten notes today, let's say I had 2 people on the hot sheet today, 13 birthdays on Facebook, and then my 25 high fives, because it's 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. Brian and Bobby, that would be 45 people that are hearing from Sean Carpenter before 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. 45 people that have my name going across the top of their head, into their mailbox, or across their screen of their phone or desktop. If I do that 5 days a week, that's 235 people that are hearing from Sean Carpenter And only a few of those were even about real estate. The hot sheets were about real estate, but they weren't a real estate pitch or message or call to action. It was just, can I stay in touch with my sphere of influence, with my audience, with my tribe? And if you did 235 touches a week, Brian, do you think that could turn into business next week, next month, or next year? And that's the whole philosophy is if it turns into business next week, great. If it turns into business next month, great. If it turns into business next year, great. But a lot of us know that we're going to get a phone call in the next 3 weeks that we didn't know was coming. But it could have been because they got a handwritten note from me 3 months ago, and then I tagged them on Instagram or commented on Instagram, and then I happened to send them a handwritten note another day, and it's just that routine, Brian, that just like a farmer, we got to keep watering and fertilizing those seeds every day because they could turn into a crop. So that's my 4-H club, and I see you recapped it there in the notes. So handwritten notes, hot sheets, happy birthdays, high fives.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much for sharing that. Bobby, you got anything you want to add to that?
I tell you, I just love, there's 2 of these that are my favorite because they come from Sean, and that is the handwritten notes. And I can bank on getting a text message with a video from him. There's actually 2 times that Sean is really good at this. It's at the start of basketball season for NC State basketball, and then my birthday. And he's in like clockwork. So kudos to Sean for actually living out and doing exactly what he preaches. So that's what I would really admire about this whole system he leverages and how effective it is, because it's so intentional, it's so practical, and he just it just really warms your heart when you get stuff like that.
Well, and for my birthday, he always seems to have a smart aleck comment too, just for the record. So always nice. Even my kids don't call me anymore. I get a text from my kids, "Happy birthday, Dad," and that's the extent of it. So,
but Bobby, that's what makes it a personal video message. It's not just me saying "Happy birthday to you," "Happy birthday to," and then I say something generic. I talk about Florida State, or I talk about North Carolina, or I talk about NC State Wolfpack, or I talk about something going on in their business. I just posted in the chat a link to a blog post where I wrote out kind of a detailed description of the 4-H club. And so if people go there and check that out, that would be something that would help them. I sent let me see if I can find it. I sent a video text late last night to a friend that we all know, and her comment back was, "Thank you. You do the best birthday videos." Right. Someone else that says, "Thank you, Sean. It was so nice hearing your voice. Safe travels." Right. So it's that, just think about your last birthday. How many people that sent you a video text message?
right.
I mean, if you look at Facebook now, guys, if you look at the birthdays now, when you click on the birthdays, it defaults in "Happy birthday, Brian. Happy birthday, Bobby." And so when people just click, 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 they didn't do anything but click. Whereas if you send them something unique and different, it's going to stand out. So my message I post on Facebook is it's a template, right? But it's unique, and it's not just "Happy birthday." And then if you get a video text message, it's something I think people look forward to.
Well, and it's that thing that where you're connected to us because you know some kernel about us, whether it's Brian in Florida State or Oklahoma or whatever that connection might be. You've drilled down to where it really makes it personable because that there's an element about us that makes it really unique. And so I think that's why it stands out.
Yeah. And that's the whole point, Bobby, is I'm trying to once again earn that top of mind spot because everyone knows 10 realtors, at least knows of 10 realtors. And so the day that they wake up and need real estate help, more importantly, the day one of their coworkers, friends, neighbors, or family members mentions real estate, if they just got a text message, a phone call, a social post, and they say, "Well, you should call Sean Carpenter. They'll take good care of you," right?
Yeah. And I would do that in a heartbeat if somebody said, "Well, hey, Bobby, do you know an agent that's in the greater Columbus, Ohio area?" I know who my go-to guy is then.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I'm going to give you a statistic because Sean said everybody knows at least 10 realtors. Are you ready for this? You guys need this stat because this is important to remember. There are 8.5 million people in the state of North Carolina, and there are 120,000 real estate licensees. That means that the average person in North Carolina knows 70 real estate licensees. That's 70, not 17. So what are you doing to stand out? And that's what you know, Sean's program does, and I'm, you know, again, I vouch for it. I get it every time. It's like clockwork. It's usually the first message of the day because it shows up between 8 and 8:30 most of the time. I've started doing it a little bit. I don't do it as well as Sean does, but I try to make sure that I'm entering my birthdays into my calendar now so that I remember who it is. I put their name, I put the year they were born, and I put their phone number all into a single calendar invite, and that way I can just work my way down the list that morning, and it'll be everything from singing happy birthday to some of them. And trust me, if you heard me sing, you'd know I was a DJ for 20 years. So it's a little bit frustrating, but it's a great way to do that and be able to literally, for a 30-second hit, there's a lot of power and branding behind that. And I'm not so sure that the custom text to the individual for their birthday is not the highest value touch, even over a handwritten note, in my personal opinion. Just my thoughts. You know, now it's great to back it up with a handwritten note. If you send somebody a text message and video for their birthday, and then you send them a card on top of it, that's a double whammy, you know, things like that. I've also gotten some success out of sending birthday cards to people's dogs. When I was working at German Shepherd Rescue, I was the one in charge of keeping up with the database of whose dog went where. And so I would send a birthday Milk-Bone dog biscuit to everybody on their gotcha date. So there's all kinds of little things that you can do that for. And I think that that's a big piece as we're looking at what the real estate business looks like in the future. The basics are still the key. You can have all of this shiny stuff and all of the cool stuff. You need a website, you need a database, and you need to communicate with that database. And by the way, if I'm you, I would be bookmarking Sean's blog because he's got stuff on there every week. There's something of value. So you can go ahead and bookmark that. So let's—
Brian, here's a little
Yeah,
hack,
go for it.
little hack I want to share with people. You know, I'm on an iPhone, but you can do this, I'm sure, on Android as well. Here's an idea for you guys next time you're sitting around at an open house with nobody traffic coming in, or you're sitting around saying, what can I do to build my business? If you just go through your clientele in your database, right, in your phone, and I'm just going to go to the search button, and instead of typing in a name, I'm going to actually type in an emoji, a little house emoji, right? If you put a house emoji next to your clients' names, then you just search for the house and it will show you all your clients. Maybe you put your buyers, you put a key next to it, or people you help sell their house, you put a house next to it. If I'm going to look for my coaching clients, I can plug in the market graph, right? I plugged in a little market graph, and all the people I coach show up there very quickly. So when you're sitting there, Brian, at the gate at the airport when you travel, and you're like, you know what, I got 25 minutes. I'm going to blast out a text to 5 of my past clients, search for the house, and there's your past clients right there in front of you.
I love
What a great hack.
That's genius. That's freaking genius.
Yeah.
Okay, we're done here, folks.
You got enough to go with now.
I got nothing.
Now, Brian, think about how many emojis there are. You could have a bourbon next to people's names. You could have a cigar next to people's names. You could have baseball next to people's names. You could have a ram or whatever for the Carolina. You know, there's just so many things that we can just hack a quicker way to get in touch with someone than search through our phones. But there are times when I'm having a beer on the back patio, because I get used to doing the video text messages in my birthdays, I'm not afraid to hit the red button that records, right? And because it's 1-to-1, I will literally just open up my contact list and I'll spin my wheel, so to speak, and I'll stop and I'll send a text to Annette Anthony and I'll say, Annette, hey, it's Sean Carpenter in Columbus, Ohio. Just want to let you know you won today's video text of the day. Been a long time since we talked. Hope life is treating you well. Let's catch up on a Zoom sometime soon, and maybe we'll run into each other out in the field. Until then, keep building relationships, solving problems, and having fun. Right? A little video text message now to Annette out of the blue because I randomly picked her name. That's going to make an impact.
Damn you for making it so easy. Love it, man. I love it. So, all right. So we're about 35 minutes in. It's time to open the floor to any questions. So folks, you got about 90 years worth of experience here. If anybody's got a question or something that they'd like some help solving, or what's the market doing, other ideas, let it fly. So just unmute and start talking. We will see what we get here.
What is everybody doing for their listings that are sitting? I haven't had a listing sit in several years, and I have 2 that are sitting.
Yeah, we're seeing that. We're seeing that heavy right now. The average time on the market for a resale in Wake County right now has gone up to 61 days. So I think people are doing a couple of things. Number one, people are being slower to do price reductions. It was at a point for a while where if the house didn't sell in the first 2 weekends, we were lowering the price right off the bat. And I think you've got that going on. I think you've got more time on the market. And to be honest with you, the last 3 weeks of showings have been some of the lowest showing weeks in the last few years. There's been very little activity because if you recall back to the mid September when the anticipation of the rates going down was at its peak, and we saw things at 5.85 and 5.9% on a 30-year fixed conventional with 20% down. All of a sudden rates went back up by a half to 3/4 of a point. And so all of the buyers that didn't get in on that jumped out again. And so things started sitting. And I think that's when we were originally went above 8,000 listings, was back at the end of September, right after those rates started bumping up again, Chris. So I think I think that's just a lot of the market is circling the airport, to use a metaphor. Or a metaphor, excuse me. My mother would yell at me for calling it a metaphor. But it's really just, I think a lot of people are waiting until after the election to at least have an idea. And then of course, the other piece of it is the Fed probably is going to lower rates again on the 7th. And the challenge with the Fed is I think people understand, in our business at least, that the Fed rate has absolutely nothing to do with mortgage rates. But what it does do is when the Fed begins to lower rates, that's when consumers finally believe us that rates will eventually go down. And I think what you're seeing is you're seeing lenders who got very busy all of a sudden with refinances, because there are a lot of people out there with 8% loans. As much as we talk about the fact that 47% of people in the United States have a loan that is 4% or lower right now, and that's kind of an anchor to them. But when you look at it, there's also about 17% of the market that has a rate that is 7 3/4 or higher. And those people, that 5.9 to 6.25 rate cut was a massive number for them. It was $125, $130 a month in many cases. And that's significant savings over the life of the loan when you look at it. So you had this big bump of activity, and I did a call with both Michael Martin and Scott Walton. Michael's from Fairway and Scott from Nexus, and they both made the comment that they saw a ton of refinance activity with the rate drop, and then everything slowed down. The buyer activity is at a glacial pace, to quote The Devil Wears Prada here. It's moving at a glacial pace. And so when do we come out of that? And the answer is the market doesn't begin to jump until nationwide the numbers are around 5.75, somewhere in that ballpark. I just think too many people have a low interest rate that they're not going to move if they get higher than a 6% rate. And that's where new construction also has an advantage, because they're doing, $1 million worth of buy downs. And, the house that used to be 450 is now listed at 475 because they're using 25 grand to buy down the rate from 7% to 5.25 in order to get people with that 2-1 buy down to set them up, not realizing that 2 years later their rate's going to go back up. So you're seeing the 2-1 buy down, the 3-2-1 buy down. You're seeing 5-1 buy downs that are all over the place in our market, and I think you're going to continue to see that, and that's what's making it tough for resales. If somebody can buy a 15-year-old house for $500,000 and has to spend $30,000, $35,000, $40,000 fixing it up, or they can go down the street and buy something brand new at $550,000, get the buy down, get a lower monthly mortgage payment, and be in a brand new house. Guess where the majority of the buyers are going these days? Especially that Gen Z buyer. Gen Z buyers, they're walking in a house and they don't want to have to do anything. They just want to move their stuff in and start living. And so it's a different world from where, you know, when I bought my first house, you kind of expected to do $15,000-$20,000 worth of work to it, and expected to put some elbow grease into it. The young folks these days, and I would it's not just Gen Z, but it's like 35 and below. They want to, if they're going to buy a house, they want to not be attached to it. They want to be able to buy something that they can sell again quickly if they decide to relocate, whether it be a job or anything. So there's a lot of pieces that are playing into that. And
I got a couple of comments on that, Brian, if you don't mind.
go for it. Yep.
So, 1000 Watt, who is a marketing firm on the West Coast, they did a survey of consumers, and the survey said, generally speaking, when you think about moving to or buying a new home, do you first think of the mortgage interest rates or think about the amount of the monthly payment you think you can afford? So guess what the statistics on that was?
Payment.
In terms of interest rates. So 24% only thought about interest rates. The 72% thought about the amount of the monthly payments. And you said this before, Brian, that we're all sort of indoctrinated to think of correlating buying a car and buying a house, because it's all about the monthly payments, what I can afford in the monthly payments. So I think we're missing, you know, if you're in new construction, you're really challenged to even know how to articulate what a buy down is and get some value out of that. So I think that's a struggle that we face in our industry. The other thing that I wanted to mention was that this idea of Chris dealing, and we're all dealing with this. How do we get more exposure on our listings today? You know, and I would tell you that, you know, there's just not a magic bullet out there, guys. It's not a silver bullet that's going to, you know, instantly help you get that home sold. But what you can do incrementally is, I saw a guy do a genius post the other day on Instagram where he basically was driving down the road in his car and he'd already got permission from his seller. He said, hey, I'm on the way to a home located in XYZ neighborhood, and we're going to go ahead and implement a price adjustment. This home has this. If you'd like more information about this property, then send me a DM and I'll get it to you right away. So his whole inbox just was flooded with people who were curious about this particular home he was headed to, and he was showing it as he's going down the road and going through the entrance to the neighborhood. He didn't identify the property, but if you're interested in this neighborhood, give me a call, send me a DM, and let me know. So that's just one little tactic, but there needs to be a totality of tactics to really move the needle when it comes to exposure.
I want to answer Rob Zellum's question in the chat. He says, could we put phrases like ask how you can have your monthly mortgage payment under blank per month? The answer is no. Realtors can't do that advertisement unless they're sharing a flyer from their mortgage lender or something like that as an external file. The reason we can is because the payment amount is a trigger term. And so it would be a violation of the Truth in Lending Act and the Settlement Procedures Act, because you're disclosing information that may or may not have a trigger term in it. You've got to explain how you're getting to that payment, what's the buy down and things like that. So I don't think, I think I'd stay away from those, Rob. Certainly don't want to be the example with a 10-year felony and being up there in Butner with what used to be Bernie Madoff's cell and up there next to Tiger King, whatever his name is, Crazy Joe. I do want to talk about something with that though. Remember your concessions. We're seeing a lot of sellers that are willing to come off of their list price, $3, $4, $10, $12, $15,000 in some cases. You can always write a full price offer on the house and then have them pay $10,000 in closing costs on behalf of the buyer. And instead of using that money for a concession of some kind to do repairs or something like that, you can buy down the rate and save yourself a lot more money over the life of the loan. So, and I think you need to have your mortgage lender discuss that with them, but you can put the bug in the ear so that they at least ask the question of your favorite mortgage lender when you send them over there. And one of the things that I'm seeing a lot is even though a real estate agent makes a recommendation of a mortgage lender, people seem to be going with who their friend recommends these days. I've the last 6 buyers that I've represented, I would give them my copies of the 3 mortgage lenders that I recommend, and none of them have used any of them because they've had a friend in the business. So mortgage licenses are kind of like real estate licenses in North Carolina. If you probably know 70 people that have a mortgage license, so there's a lot of that playing in. But yeah, Chris, we're seeing this is the toughest market that I've seen since 2008 and 9. When we were at the tail end of the downturn. And I remember I found a postcard the other day when I was going through some stuff. It was about 6 months ago at this point, and it was a postcard that said "sold in only 163 days." That was a good number of days back in that era. So I think it's definitely something that's coming along. Who else has got a question that'd like to open up and ask? All you got to do is click that unmute button. Go ahead, Diane.
No, sorry. I was just going to add a comment to that as a strategy. And I don't know if some of you have done this in tougher markets, but we've done like reverse offers sometimes. So that's just another thought. If it's, where the seller puts the offer together and kind of puts it in front of the buyers or potential buyers, sometimes that works.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another great way to think outside the box. Definitely. And just remember, for those of you that haven't been licensed, but maybe 4 or 5 years, this is the first time you've dealt with a market where you actually had to spend some time marketing the property. It's, we've seen average days on the market below 10 for about 2 years there, and for a long time. If you average it out over the last 5 years, the average days on the market is higher than it has been since probably 2015 and 16. And the number of transactions we're having is more like 2013 and 14 if you go back and look historically. So there's a lot.
Brian, that's I was going to add. Maybe we need to get back to looking at our pantry full of marketing tactics, and instead of doing them all on day one, we professional photos will be taken, and you'll be hit on all the portals within the first 2 days. We'll hold an initial open house the first weekend. Then we'll hold a broker open house the second weekend. Then we'll hold a third open house, maybe the fourth weekend. Then we'll discuss our first price reposition will happen 21 days after it hits the market. If you say that to the seller when you take the listing, that after 21 days, we'll be looking to do a price repositioning, you're sort of setting expectations that we need to be ahead of the market, not let the market chase us, right? And so instead of doing all of your marketing activities in the first week, sometimes maybe partitioning them out a little bit so you can bring that extra thing to the market down the road. But obviously it starts, to Chris's point, it starts with conversations and expectations up front, right?
Yeah,
at this price, here's what we're seeing.
So I'm going to show you guys, this is something that I use. This is called the SERP technique. And it's fairly simple. It's just a single page. It's the SERP stands for Strategic Incremental Reduction in Price. How's it work? We're going to lower your price by a set amount on a set amount of period with a maximum reduction in place. And if your home's been on the market for more than 30 days and has not had an offer, the system is for you. That should say you, not yours. So I'll make that correction while we're sitting here. But let's suppose that a house is listed at $525 and they don't want to make that $25,000 reduction right off the bat. I'll say, okay, let's set it up so that we do $5,000 a week for the next 5 weeks with a maximum of drop down to 500. And so we put that in place on the what is it, Form 710, I think is the agency adjustment form here in North Carolina. But this is a simple way so that, and the nice thing about it is, let's suppose you're 2 weeks in and the house is at 515. Somebody comes in with an offer of 505. You can look at it and say, look, if you wait another 3 weeks, you're going to be at 500 anyway. Let's go ahead and take this one and get it under contract. It creates some urgency on the back side there. So this is just one of the things that I use that you can use. Again, the whole idea today is rip off and duplicate and take advantage of something. So again, I'll upload a copy of this to the chat box so that people can grab it and use it to their advantage if you want it. It'll come to you as a Word doc, and you'll be able to edit it in any way, shape, or form you want to.
So a question I have for the group is, what shifts, if any, have people been seeing in either seller behavior or buyer behavior with the NAR settlement having been in place?
I had to take my first listing where the seller did not want to pay a buyer agent commission. And it wasn't that she didn't want to pay it, it's that she wanted, let me preface it by saying it was over $1 million. And she felt like agents getting 2.4%, 2.5% on $1 million is a big chunk of money. And she was feeling like if she didn't advertise 2.4% and left it up to the buyer and the agent to ask for a compensation, she would wind up paying less money.
So she didn't necessarily not want to pay it. She just didn't want to lead with that. We're offering a 2.4%.
Right. She didn't want a 220 form filled out. She didn't want to say, I'm going to do 2.4, because she also wanted to see if she had to negotiate on the price. So she's like, I'm listing it at this price. And what if they come in, a lot less, then I still have to pay the same commission. And so she didn't want to do that. And I think that some sellers are, and I had an offer on it that was declined, but the agent was a little bit weird because the agent was a lender and was also her realtor and only asked for like $5,000, but that offer wasn't accepted. And then there was another offer that was full price and the agent asked for only 1%. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit crazy, and I didn't like doing it, but there were some agents that were very rude when they wanted to show it, and half of them didn't even ask. But I would usually call and, talk to them and whatever. But the ones that, I said, she's not offering, you need to ask for a compensation. Some of them just didn't want to show it. So I think and I don't know that that was actually the clients or if it was the agent that decided they weren't going to show it. So it's a little bit different, but it did sell, and it actually sold quicker than my other ones that were less expensive. But I think we're going to see that more and more.
Did the seller end up paying a commission to the buyer?
She did. The buyer's agent asked for 1% and she paid it, no problem. I think they could have asked for 2.5% and she probably would have paid it, but I think she wanted to have that door open in case she had to come down on the price more or what have you. So I think we're going to see that more and more.
Well, I will tell you a story from Travis Everett, who's a fellow instructor, teaches pre-license, post-license. He had a situation, and he's decided that he's just doing a flat fee of $15,000 for buyers right now. And he had a situation where they went to closing, and the actual compensation that was being offered was more than the $15,000. It ended up being like $17,100. Travis gave him back the $2,100 at closing and used it as a rebate. I'll tell you, he's got a client for life by doing that, because he was getting paid more than what the piece was. So the offer that the seller was making, he put that money back into the pocket of the buyer and used it as part of their cash to close. Now, he had to approve that with the lender. But I think you're going to start seeing more flat fee services rather than percentages along those lines. I'm dealing with one right now. For the first time, the people listed, they weren't paying a buyer's agent compensation at all, didn't have any intention of doing so, even if someone wrote an offer. And property's been on the market for 2 weeks and there have been 0 showings, and we've had 8 or 9 inquiries. And as soon as I tell people that tell the buyer's agent that there's no compensation, suddenly they disappear. Now, just for the record, that's the epitome of price fixing, folks. What we're trying to solve with this. So you do have to be careful with that and make sure that the buyer is making that decision not to see it, because if the agent's making the decision not to see it, that's not only price fixing, but it's also potentially steering, which is a fair housing violation and could put you in jail for 10 years. So you've got to be aware.
But we don't know. We don't know.
Correct. You have to ask the buyer. It's their choice as to whether they see it. And I tell everybody, treat every showing like a for sale by owner. Call the listing agent. Are you offering a compensation? I've got a buyer that would be interested. This would meet their requirements based on the information I'm seeing. Are you paying a compensation to the buyer's agent if I sell the property? Whatever that number is, bring it back to the buyer. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, this is how much they're offering. Do you want to go see the property? Yes or no? And then if they decide to go see it, then you proceed. It's just a simple phone call. But the other thing that worries me is that buyer's agents, The only thing that they're asking me when they call is about the compensation. You should be asking me more questions about the house before you bother making an appointment to show it. What are the terms that what kind of time frame is the seller looking for? Are they willing to do a rent back, or would they be interested in delaying the closing for somebody that's not going to move here until January? You need to be asking more questions about the property. If I've got one listed right now that's got a shared well. Hardly anybody's asked about the shared well. They only want to know what the buyer compensation is. So buyer's agents used to call the listing agent before setting up showings and ask lots of questions about the house. And even though it was not as much detail back in the day as there is in the MLS now, I still think sorry, I've got dogs barking in the background. I apologize. But I think you have to look at more details, go do your research for the septic system, et cetera. There's a lot more to showing a property than just the buyer's agent compensation. Sorry, I had to scream at the dogs and get them to hush. All right, what else? Can y'all still hear the dogs barking in the background? All right, sorry.
That's all right. Isn't the first time we heard a dog bark on Zoom?
This is the truth.
All right, that should help a little bit. Sorry about that. Oh,
Brian,
Chris,
I'll throw something out to the group just to finish it. We're getting towards the end here.
Absolutely.
Is anyone doing anything unique, or maybe they have a tradition where they do stuff around the holidays? I know a lot of our agents do pie giveaways for Thanksgivings, breakfast and or movies with Santa. Does anyone have anything that they would share? I do beers from Sean Claus. It started during COVID in order to help keep the local breweries open and alive. I'll send out a thing in early December saying, here's 6 different beers from 6 different breweries in town. Let me know if you want a 6-pack of one of these or a sampler pack, and then Sean Claus will deliver them. And so I spent a couple days delivering 6 packs of beer with just a handwritten note and something fun. Is anyone doing anything fun like that they want to share?
I know that there were some people on a call that I was on earlier today that are doing the pies from Costco. Did you know that 75% of the pies, the pumpkin pies sold at Costco in the month of November, are sold to real estate agents?
Really?
Costco literally caters to real estate agents for those pies. I know people that have Costco memberships specifically so that they can go get the pies every year. So it's kind of crazy how many. I've got one friend that gives away almost 600 pies every year, and he's literally backing up a U-Haul truck to load them all in. It's crazy. It's crazy.
And here's the math for that, guys. If you can get at least 3.14 referrals, it's worth it.
Yep. There you go.
See what I did there?
Nicely
Jody
done.
got it. Jody got it.
Jody got it. Oh my goodness. Well, folks, I want to say thank you to everybody who's joined us today. Mr. Carpenter, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. He's an unpaid guest today, folks. He's not here to campaign. He didn't have a teleprompter or anything like that. So we appreciate him being here. Bobby, as always, it's good to see you, buddy. I hope you guys have a safe trip this week and enjoy your time. And we're doing this every month, but for Bobby and myself. So we invite you guys to come join us. We'll post those links and invite you to come get your questions answered. As always, we appreciate it. I'm going to put the link for the YouTube channel one more time into the chat box so that you can pick up this. We'll upload this recording sometime later today, and you'll be able to watch it on replay on the YouTube channel. There's that. So just click on there and subscribe to it. You can go watch last month's. There's also some other stuff on there. There's a past interview with Michael Martin from Fairway Independent Mortgage and with Scott Walton from Nexus. And there's always good stuff coming up on there. Sean Carp on Instagram and Twitter. If you're not on X/Twitter, I highly encourage you to be. There is some good information that can be found. Yes, there's a lot of garbage on it, but you can set it up so that you're only seeing what you're following. And there's a lot of good information like NAR research and details like that. So if you want to get on there and you need some guidance in terms of who to follow, please don't hesitate to direct message me and I'll get those on there. But definitely follow Sean is Sean Carp, SeanCarp. Bobby is RE Web Coach on there. So you can go follow him also. Mine's simple, BP8 Realty, just like everything else. So thanks everybody for being here. Sean, thanks again, buddy. Bobby, great to see you. And we'll catch up with you next time. Bye-bye.